Welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from December 9th, 2022. And I'm recording this on June 9th, 2023. As always, I give you those dates so that you know when this information is actually most relevant, because the market is always moving and changing, as we'll see when we look at these values. As always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Each week they both put out lists of 10 books that are hot in the market in that moment because of some sort of news related to them, hot new cover, something that's got people chasing those books at that moment. And we do a look back show here 6 months later to see how they actually performed longer term, not like super long term, but in the relatively long term, to see whether they were worth chasing or whether you'd been better off being patient. If you've been following this list that we've been doing now for over 4 years, you'll know that for the most part, you need to be patient, but there are circumstances where that doesn't always hold true. So let's dig into the list and see what we can learn. All right, first up, we got Amazing Spider-Man #1, the M&M Spotlight variant, limited to 1,000 copies. So we've seen the full color. This has got the black and white background. The full color one was going for big bucks. It held really well. How did this one do? Well, when this first came out of the gate, it was doing $600 to $700 raw. Now it's $375 to $700. So there's still, the high-end sales are still up there, but there are sales you could definitely do better. But for the most part, you're looking in that similar kind of range. 9.8, 700 to 1,000, so not much, just slightly above like raw copies here in terms of value on the 9.8. Overall, I'm calling this steady, and I'll be back because most of the sales are within that, or very close to that $600 to $700 range. But there are a few sales underneath, so you can find deals if you are patient and keep looking. Next, we have Thanos Death Notes #1, the 1 in 100 EM Gist variant. This 1 in 100 was going for $225 plus. Now, a lot of times I'll talk about the rules of, with ratio variants of double and triple the value of the double or triple the ratio number for the value in order to determine. 1 in 100s don't really hold that kind of solid pattern. But one that's going for over 200, over double in that case, usually do pretty well. This one has done pretty well, 90 to 200 on raw copies after being at 225 back then. But 9.8 only going for 200. You could argue this is definitely borderline trap, but most of the sales are closer to the 200 mark than they are to the 90. So I still put down and I'll be back. I put down and I'll be back here, but if you wanted to argue trap, I couldn't argue it gets you too hard for sure. So this is one of those borderlines trap, I'll be back, but definitely down. Next, we have Pop Kill #1, the second print Adam Hughes, limited to 1,000. So we talked about this book last week. The original just kept going up. Last week when we talked about it, it was a $200 to kind of $300, $200 to $285 on value. By this point, it was 300 plus. Now it's 150 to 300, 9.8, 250 to 400. Most of the sales are down around the $200, in that $200 range. So this actually is a down in a trap. Last week when we talked about it, it was kind of a steady I'll be back because it was still in that lower 200 range, and slightly below. But this one it's definitely kind of a trap at this point. All right, we've got a couple more covers to go. We got Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur #1, the Doton Akande, I don't know how you pronounce that person's name, 1 in 25, $50 to $75 for this sucker when it was coming out, which is in that double to triple ratio, which usually means it's gonna be double to asking, or double to ratio is usually where it ends up. So if it doesn't get to triple, it's usually gonna fall below double and be just slightly above ratio. That is wrong with this one. Only one raw sale, $6, because most of the asking prices are 20 to 30, and it's just not selling even at ratio. There was a 9.8 sale that went for 200, which you're like, ooh, value, but that's the only sale. And there's 9.8s listed at $100 that aren't selling right now. So that 9.8 is kind of an oddball. This is a dumpster fire with one sale at 6 and one 9.8 sale. Yeah, if you paid 50 to 75 for this and you're trying to move it, good luck. It is definitely not a book that appears to have been worth being invested in. A reminder, part of the reason people were chasing this was that animated show was starting back then. And yeah, it didn't seem to have any legs in terms of sustaining values for these books. Next, we have Frank Miller's Pandora, number 1, the Frank Miller 1 in 25. So this was his new publishing company. He did a variant for the very first book. Raw copies were going for $25 to $45 there. So not even double ratio, not a good sign. That usually means it's going to end up well below ratio. That's the case here. Most of these sales are $5 to $15 now, which is definitely a dumpster fire. There was a $45 sale, but that is definitely an outlier. Yeah, it just, I mean, you can get it. It's listed for $15, $30. Yeah. And there's lots of sales underneath that, even though there's lots of listings underneath that, even though the most recent sale is at $45. That feels like a complete outlier. Either somebody didn't do any work or it's a fraudulent sale or something. But yeah, this book is definitely not another dumpster fire for sure. Next, we have Quested, number 1, the Legend of Zelda homage variant. This 1 in 25 was going for $30 to $35. Also not a good sign. And it ended up, yes, below ratio, 15 to 25 now. Another trap on this one. A book that definitely did not hold for sure right here. All right, couple more. We still got a bunch of covers. We're still doing covers here. We got Miles Morales, Spider-Man, number 1, the Peach Momoko 1 in 200. Now, once you get to a 1 in 200, like any of my rules about where they are relative to ratio go out the window. It's really just about a book like this needs to probably jump more than it does. But yeah, they can sustain better sometimes. But they hit the list so rarely, it's hard to really have a pattern here. But this 1 in 200 was going for ratio 2 to 225, which is not a bad sign, but probably not one that tells you really should chase it. Now it's 100 to 150, so another trap, so about half price. 9.8s are still going 3 to 350, so if you get 9.8, you're actually doing pretty good, even if you bought in at the 200. But yeah, definitely a trap on this book. Yeah, Peach Momokos haven't held as well since we got past some of those original ones. So yeah, they haven't tended to hold up very well. All right, next we have a long-term cover. This is Wonder Woman number 28 from 2014. This is the steampunk western kind of thing variant that they had. This J.G. Jones 1 in 25. It's super hard to find and in high demand. This goes for big money whenever it comes up, usually. Back then, 9.4 went for $550, at 9.2 went for $500. So yeah, there was a lot of interest in this. And there's no recent sales of this. There's only, I think, one listed, and it's listed for crazy money. We're going to put this as steady and worth it because I have no reason to go otherwise here. And yeah, this book has a history of selling for money, just not the crazy money the one listed for is right now. But definitely a book that is, if it comes up, it usually goes pretty quickly if it's even slightly reasonable in price. Next, we have Joker, the Man Who Stopped Laughing, number 3, the Lee Bermejo cover B variant. So this is just a regular variant, which is so funny when you're like, regular variant, because it's not incentive or anything else. Yeah, the way the market has changed with covers is just crazy. But anyway, this thing was going for $10 to $20 out the gate, this Joker is Santa Claus. Now it's a $5 to $40 book. Most of the sales are still kind of around 20-ish, 15, 20-ish, that kind of stuff. But there's definitely multiple sales above there. There's definitely multiple sales below there. So we're going to call this steady and worth it based on that because there are some higher sales. But for the most part, you're looking at right in the range where it was before, to slightly above. 9.8, 1 to 125. So yeah, this is a book that continues to draw a lot of interest. Not necessarily surprised by that. I didn't think it would quite sustain this well and have these higher sales, but it is. So people are definitely still chasing this Joker cover for sure. All right, last cover is, so I don't know how many books we're in. What are we at? I got my little 10th book of our 19 is our last cover, and that is DN Agents. From 1985, number 24. This is a classic Dave Stevens cover that Stevens collectors were chasing. Pushed prices $20 to $60 for raw copies back then. A 9.8 hit $350, which is really what prompted this to be on the list. Now it's still a $20 to $50 book. 9.8, 275 to 325 for down just slightly on recent sales. So we're going to call this a steady and I'll be back because most of the sales are still raw and they are right in that same range. And the 9.8s are just a slight step back. So we'll definitely call this, we'll go with I'll be back here. But definitely those Dave Stephen fans love these covers and this is one they're definitely chasing. All right, we got two option news books this week to talk about. First up is Lodger #1. This IDW comic was getting optioned and causing raw copies to go for $8 to $10, so about double cover, plus 1,000% increase in sales. So yeah, it was like, oh, we gotta jump on this. Well, now it's a $5 to $10 book, so still basically the same thing, but only 2 sales. So we're going to still call this down and I'll be back because there's just nobody necessarily changed in this. And it's, $5 to $10. You will notice part of the reason the covers were all at the beginning here this week was because I did all the CBSI books first. So next, our other option book is Marjorie Finnegan, Temporal Criminal #1. Also optioned, also a 2,000% increase in sales, but still only going for like $8, so like double cover, slightly more. 9.8 going for $60 back then. Now it's a $3 to $10 book, not many sales, down and I'll be back. A lot of interest lost in this, and you can still get it for basically in the same range, but slightly cheaper. And yeah, just not a lot of interest in this book now. All right, we got one Comic Buzz book, and that is Thor #6, the second print, future version. And basically, after all this time, it seemed like we were maybe moving toward paying some of this off. Because of Thanos' Death Note, there was a new Infinity Stone that seems to be part of this glove and stuff that's on his hand as part of this. So that's why this was getting interest again. $15 back then, 9.8 going for $60, which were both still down from the first time people thought, oh, Cage is going to do something cool here. But now it's a $1 to $8 book, 9.8, 30 to 40. So another trap. I don't think any of this has ever yet paid off. I don't know that it will anytime soon. So we will see. All right. With that, we got one DC movie related book. And we actually just got a poster, I think, for this book or for this movie just recently. And that is Infinite Crisis #5, the first appearance of Jaime Reyes as Blue Beetle. He appears in 3, but he doesn't become Blue Beetle till 5. Raw copies back then were going for $60, 9.8 going for $230. Now it's a $30 to $50 book. 9.8s though are right over the same range, $2 to $275. So probably could have called this a steady on the 9.8 side, but the vast majority of the sales are the raw copies. So we did still go with down, and I'll be back on this one. But definitely, we'll see what happens with this movie. We'll see what happens with Flash. Can it restore some of our faith in DC movies? Not sure. We'll see. But before we get into the James Gunn era, we got to make it through Flash and Blue Beetle and Aquaman to see before we start getting the new version of DC. Next, we have Daredevil #254, the first appearance of Typhoid Mary. And this and the next book are both hit the list because of casting rumors related to Daredevil Born Again. So that they were possible casting / recast of Typhoid Mary in this Daredevil universe. Raw copies back then were going for $25, 9.8 going for $550. Now it's a $5 to $35 book on a raw copy with most of the sales underneath the 25 it was before, but still a couple above. 9.8, 300, which is a big drop from there. So we still put this as down in a trap. You could argue I'll be back on the raw side, but definitely a trap for those 9.8s. Next, we have Uncanny X-Men #229, the first appearance of Tiger, who is the Queen Pin of Madripoor. So there's rumors that Madripoor was going to be a part of the show and that this character was going to interact with Kingpin in some way. And there's a possible love interest to Kingpin, possible love interest to Daredevil. I don't know. But that was all the rumors with the two ladies that were cast, that these two might be two of the characters they were playing. Right back then, raw copies were going for $12, 9.8 going for $100. Now it's a $1 to $15 book with most of the sales closer to $1 than to $15. 9.8 going for $100, but just a couple sales there. And like I said, most of those raw sales were $1 to $5 and not the 15. So we still put this as a down, and I'll be back for sure. We'll see. I'd never really even heard of this character, so we'll see if we get her. But with the writer's strike and everything, I think we're still long. Who knows when we'll get Daredevil Born Again for sure. All right, with that, we had, I don't remember, I didn't write down trailer, but I'm guessing we had our first Guardians trailer back then, or maybe just some Guardians news for Guardians 3, because we have the next 3 books are all related to Guardians 3. We had Thor number 134, the first appearance of the High Evolutionary. Back then, raw copies were doing 80 to 400. Tom had the average at 650. There was no sales in that range. They put down a 9.2 sale that was all the way back. Remind you, this list was in December, and they're like, oh, the most recent 9.2 was $1,000 from September. There was an 8.5 that went right in this range for $590, which was the highest sale that was close to this time period. Now, raw copies are 30 to 200, so clearly down here. 9.0, 1,300, which is kind of supporting that the 9.2 for 1,000 was a pretty good buy back then, but just not a lot of sales on that high-grade slab side. We've gotten the High Evolutionary. We've sort of seen his fate in Guardians 3. I'm still going to put this as down, and I'll be back. My guess is it'll continue to back up as we continue to move away from the movie, so I think, yeah, even being patient for a little while longer, you'll definitely get a better deal here. Next, we have Incredible Hulk number 271, the second appearance, first cover of Rocket, also the first appearance of Lila. We discovered we were going to get Lila. Back then, raw copies were going for $100 to $200. 9.8 hit 1,000, 30. Now raw copies are 50 to 200. 9.8, 1150. So this one I put as steady with an I'll be back, because some of the on the low end you can definitely save a little money. And we will see, but I guess as we move away from Guardians, that this book will take a couple more steps back before it settles back kind of where the long-term going rate for this is. And then finally, our 19th book of the week, and our last book to talk about, is Fantastic Four number 67, the first cameo appearance of him. We knew we were getting Adam Warlock in the movie. We did. Some people were not super happy with that portrayal, but I thought it was okay, just not particularly great. Back then, copies were going for $100 to $2 raw, 9.8 going for $2,400, or 9.4 going for $2,400, excuse me. This was another one where they said the average was 15, which made no sense since the highest sale I could find at the time was a 9.0 going for $900. But anyway, other than that 9.4 sale, raw copies 25 to 150 right now, although there was a high grade that went for 700. So yeah, definitely you get a high grade raw copy, sometimes you're going to get a high outlier on a raw price. 9.2 going for 13, so it's hard to really judge. No recent 9.4 sales, but my guess is 9.4s haven't really moved that much. So despite all of this, I think this is kind of a steady I'll be back, as opposed to really down. Now I may drop some more going forward, but it's been pretty steady. This is a solid book. I mean, we're talking about these last 3 books are Silver Bronze Age keys that have a true track record. So there's a little fluctuation here with the movie, but not a whole lot. It's really just about finding a good deal, because long term, these books are all going to be worth it or better. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time. Later.